Hello everyone, this is part 13 of What If Naruto Was Reborn as a Shinigami, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist. To see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. The trip back to Konoha was spent in silence, uncomfortable, grating, noisy silence. The kind of silence that can kill someone by suffocating them with its perpetual weight. No one was having fun. Sakura kept throwing glances between Naruto, who was carrying a sleeping Tenten in his arms, and his newly acquired wings that ruffled every now and then. The girl part of her wanted to see if they were as fluffy as they looked. The medic part wanted to examine them to see how they worked. Kakashi was trying to keep up his cool facade while throwing looks toward his blonde student. He hadn't believed Naruto any of the times he'd told them that he was Kami's warrior. In fact, he'd pretty much laughed behind the boy's back. But people don't just sprout angel wings out of thin air. There isn't a Kekai Genkai for that. He'd settled, instead, for giggling into his L book. Trying to figure out the mystery was a bother, and besides, he'd be there for the debriefing. Tsunade's curiosity finally got the better of her and she called a halt so that she could examine Tenten again. They were just a 2 hours walk from Konoha by now and she really wanted to examine both of the teens. As Naruto sat down with Tenten in his lap, she observed his wings spread out slightly to adjust to the ground. Those new appendages fascinated her. Naruto sat on the ground cross-legged with Tenten in his lap and gently shook her awake. The bun-haired girl's eyes fluttered open and she smiled when she saw his face. Hey you. Hey, how long was I out? A little over an hour and a half. Tsunade wants to check and make sure you're okay. Tenten nodded and then noticed the wings again. She gasped and jumped to her feet, touched them tenderly and ran her hands down the length of them. They're real. I thought I imagined them. Naruto chuckled and groaned when she stroked the feathers. Nope, they're real all right. They're so soft and fluffy. Quote. I am not soft and fluffy. She grinned at him and rubbed her cheek against his back, near to where the wings connected, and let them caress her. No, but these are. A loud tea-clearing noise brought the two back to reality and they turned to find Tsunade with her arms crossed under her ample chest while Sakura and Kakashi looked on amused. Tenten blushed and hid behind one of the wings while Naruto grumbled something unintelligible. She didn't like being seen as a soft kunoiki. Now that the two lovebirds are still, we can examine you and make sure you're all right. Sakura, tend to Tenten. Both girls huffed at this but begrudgingly followed her orders. Tenten sat still as Sakura ran her hands over her body with a diagnostic jutsu. Tsunade was doing the same to Naruto, but they were having a hushed conversation as well. What is with your eyes and these wings? Your eyes haven't changed back yet. I don't know. It just happened. They won't go away. Usually Sanosuke shows up to explain what happened and tell me what to do, but he hasn't yet. He's probably waiting to get you alone. Now, tell me what happened. What do you mean? These wings. They're connected to your nervous system already. That shouldn't be possible. You can feel when they're touched. I saw you shiver when I rubbed them. They've integrated with you like you were born with them. Naruto looked down at the ground and sighed heavily. This would just be one more thing he would have to overcome. If he walked into Konoha like this now, what would they say? What would they do? Naruto, I don't know how the villagers will react. Your wings will draw a lot of attention and they act like your chain does, subconsciously. They furl and unfurl as if it is second thought. I touched them just now to move them out of the way and they moved on their own accord. You didn't even realize you did it, did you? He shook his head, not trusting his voice at the moment. When we get home, we're going straight to the tower. I want you to follow me and not respond to anyone, is that clear? Don't say anything. He nodded and she stood upright. You have a clean bill of health, Naruto. But then, you never have anything wrong with you. No, nothing ever is wrong with him. But Tsunade-sama, how are we going to get him back into the village without raising suspicion? Tsunade growled and turned her head to look at Kakashi. If you want to be part of the conversation, Hatake, you shouldn't eavesdrop, just come right on in. We're going to walk beside him all the way to my office. If anyone tries to attack or do anything stupid, we are to neutralize the threat. Kakashi quirked an eyebrow and nodded. Surprisingly, he didn't bring his book back to his nose yet, but instead knelt in front of Naruto. His voice was soft and his eye was half-lidded. I'm sorry, Naruto. Naruto's head slowly lifted until he was staring Kakashi in the eye. What? Kakashi sighed heavily and let his gaze fall to the ground. I'm sorry. For everything. Not being a better teacher, not helping you more, being preferential, everything. I've pushed you too far in some ways and not enough in others. I failed as a teacher and as a friend. Forgive me. To everyone's shock, Kakashi put his forehead to the ground, prostrating himself before Naruto. The blonde kept his unflinching silver gaze and when he spoke, it was slightly cracked. I can forgive you, Kakashi, but I won't forget. All I ask is that you not give me any reason to hold a grudge against you again. Forgiveness is not something to be taken lightly. Don't make me regret it. Kakashi brought his head back up to level his sights on Naruto and the smile under his mask was audible. Naruto gave him a small smile and nodded to him. Thank you, Naruto. I probably don't deserve it, but I've failed too many people without saying I'm sorry. I don't want our bond strained any more than it already is. Naruto turned his head slightly to see a bewildered Sakura. He noticed her mouth open slightly and raised his hand to silence her. Sakura, we'll talk later. Is Ten-chan okay? The pinkett closed her mouth and nodded while throwing a glance toward the brown-haired girl. Tenten stood on shaky legs and hobbled over to Naruto, letting the blood flow through her limbs again. She collapsed against him, her arms wrapped around his torso as he held her. She growled slightly when she heard Kakashi and Sakura snicker at her tenderness and could practically feel the smirk from Tsunade. Now that we're good to go, we should get a move on. It'll be dark in a few hours. Naruto nodded and scooped Tenten into his arms again, gaining a slightly jealous look from Sakura. Hey, why doesn't anyone ever offer to carry me? Tenten giggled and stuck her tongue out at the girl. Because you're too fat. The aura of danger coming off Sakura in waves gave Naruto enough incentive to run as fast as he could. Tsunade and Kakashi followed behind the fleeing teenagers, laughing while they watched Sakura try to maim the couple. Naruto looked down at Tenten exasperatedly. Why the hell did you do that? Incentive for getting home sooner. Naruto was nervous as hell as they approached the gates. It was still light out and nearing evening, so everyone would either be headed home or out for a night on the town. He wasn't going to enjoy this, not one little bit. Sakura had finally given up on trying to catch them when she realized he wasn't even touching the ground. He seemed to be gliding above it as he ran, and no friction meant faster speed. She settled on throwing them dirty looks when they rejoined the group after the danger was past. Tenten had enjoyed the chase immensely. One part because the speeds they were going were insane, the other part because he kept squeezing her into his chest. But now that they were back home, she was as nervous as Naruto and he kept squeezing her hand for support. She only hoped no one would try anything stupid. Kakashi had buried his nose in his book again, but on the inside, he was nervous. This would probably get ugly. Naruto was regarded as a demon by the greater population of Konoha, and coming home looking like an angel would probably be seen as an affront to their religious beliefs. After all, a demon should not try to emulate its better half. Tsunade kept her eyes hard as they approached the gate. She was glad that Kotetsu and Izumo were on duty today. That made her job all the easier. The two had always accepted Naruto as who he was and in actuality, had been awed by his changes, especially the hammer. They could appreciate a large weapon that took skill and strength to wield. The group of five nearly literally ran into Guy's team as they frantically ran from the village. Lee and Naruto collided, sending them both careening head over heels. Guy, Lee, and Neji had been out on a small mission while the craziness went down and had just gotten back. When they reported to the Hokage Tower, they were met with a frantic Shizune who told them what happened, and the three immediately ran off. Guy and Lee dropped their weights and Neji pumped chakra into his legs so he could keep up. They saw the five figures coming and immediately recognized Tenten's silhouette, along with that of Kakashi, Sakura, and Tsunade. They didn't recognize the winged figure though, and by the time they threw on the brakes, it was too late. Guy, being in the lead, leapt over the group and landed on his feet, skidding several feet before stopping. Neji, being in the rear and having his Byakugan activated, noticed him ahead of time and began to slow down beforehand. Lee, being right behind Guy, didn't stop in time and plowed into the winged figure, sending them both into a cartwheel of arms, legs, and fluffy, white angel wings. As the rest watched the two roll over and over, Naruto and Lee got several fleeting glances at their respective attacker and landing pad. Naruto immediately recognized the bowl cut, while Lee's eyes widened when he saw the whisker marks. The silver eyes threw him off though. As the snowball of limbs and dust came to a stop, Lee leapt to his feet and pointed an accusing finger at the blonde. "N.A., Naruto, is that you?" Naruto stood and dusted himself off while his wings beat the dust out of themselves. The four who had been traveling with him stifled giggles at the appearance of the three odd members of Team Guy beside Naruto, who was soon joined by Kotetsu and Izumo. Questions rained upon him until he couldn't take it anymore. "Shut up." They were all quiet in record time. Naruto huffed and let his wings settle back down from their ruffled stage as the five watched in fascination. "Lee, Guy, Neji, go check on Tenten. She's your teammate and friend. My situation can be explained later." The two beasts gave a cry of youth and rushed over to lavish attention on the bun-haired girl, much to her dismay, and Neji followed calmly behind. Kotetsu and Izumo did not leave though. Naruto sighed and turned his back to them. "Go ahead, I know what you want." The two crept forward cautiously and reached out to touch the downy feathers. They both blinked and stared at each other, before grinning and yanking a feather each out of the boy's wings. Naruto yelped in pain and swatted them both with a wing, sending them flying backwards towards their posts. Kakashi took his nose out of his book just long enough to impart some wisdom to the two. "You shouldn't do that. Those things are pretty strong, as you found out." His nose was immediately buried back into the pages of pure, unadulterated bliss. Tsunade sighed and picked the two up by their collars, depositing them back into the shack they had emerged from. "You two stay here. The rest of you, come with me. Keep a circle around Naruto and try not to leave any openings for any foolishness." The ninjas all nodded and encircled their friend, before heading into the village. Naruto could only hope the streets would be deserted. Sadly, they weren't. For some reason, the streets were uncommonly busy and many a passerby stopped and gawked at the odd procession. In the middle of a circle of ninjas, was what appeared to be a blonde angel, his pure white wings fluttering in the small breeze. But the most damning thing was, that upon a second look, the angelic young man was the demon brat. Many women who had swooned when they saw him at first, sneered and turned away, muttering about wolves in sheep's clothing. The older generation plainly said that the demon was trying to trick them and ushered the children away who were staring in awe at the winged man. To Naruto, it was just another reminder of his childhood and another blow to his psyche. How would he ever be accepted if he didn't even look halfway normal? He kept his eyes downcast as they walked, trying to shut out the mumbles and curses he could hear plain as day. The only thing propelling him forward was the pats on the shoulder or the squeezes of the hand from his friends and from Tenten. He just had to make it to the tower and he'd be fine. They were nearly there when a little boy stepped in front of them and the group halted. The child couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old and he showed no fear as he strode forward. The group watched as he approached Naruto and looked up with awestruck eyes. "Are you an angel?" Naruto looked down at the small boy and grinned. "Nope, I'm not an angel. Not yet anyway." The little boy nodded his head and put his finger to his chin before pointing at the wings. "Are those real?" Naruto flared his wings outward, their span reaching beyond the circle of his friends. "Of course they are. Would you like to touch them?" The little boy's face lit up and he almost bounced toward the outstretched wings. His smile beamed as he rubbed the feathers and Naruto smiled as he fluttered his wings, fanning the child with a small breeze. Tsunade was right. It was a subconscious thing. He didn't even think about it when he did it, just like an arm or a leg. Suddenly, the little boy whirled around and yelled into the shadows. "Hey, he's not scary at all. Come out and see." From the shadows of the building emerged several little boys and girls and they quickly circled round Naruto, petting his wings and touching his chain. He sat down in the road and let them satisfy their curiosity. The group around him smiled at this. It wasn't often that Naruto was accepted by the villagers. He got an idea that he thought might be fun. "You guys want to see a magic trick?" The children's eyes lit up at the prospect of a magic trick and they asked what it was. "You've seen snake charmers, right?" They nodded their heads in affirmative. Well, I don't charm snakes, but I can charm my chain. I can make it dance for you. They stared at him for a moment before laughing. Naruto put a comical scowl on his face and crossed his arms. Oi, what's so funny? You can't charm something that isn't alive. Naruto grinned and looked back at his friends, who grinned back. Wanna bet? Naruto left his wings splayed out, closed his eyes, and began to whistle a nameless tune as he bobbed backward and forward to the rhythm. The kid's eyes grew larger and larger as the chain began to unwind from his waist and coil back like a cobra, its end serpentining back and forth. They watched mesmerized as it left his waist and coiled up on the ground, undulating as it went. Naruto's friends watched as he wowed the children and had to hold in snickers as the chain worked its way toward the children, where they shrieked and hid behind his wings. Naruto stopped whistling and began to laugh, the chain stopping its undulating, halting in midair. The kids peeked back around his wings and the little boy whispered. It stopped. The chain immediately jerked its end in his direction of the boy and he squeaked before ducking behind the wing again. Naruto chuckled and let his wings drop. Don't be afraid. The chain isn't alive, I control it with chakra. It won't hurt you. They all watched as the chain wound its way back around his waist and locked itself into position. Naruto stood and beat the dust off his pants while folding his wings back into the prone position. He smiled at the kids and put his hands on his hips. Satisfied, they all nodded their heads and took off laughing. Naruto watched them go and turned to his friends and froze when he saw what was behind them. The villagers all stood with either hate or awe in their eyes and it made Naruto frown. He would never win them all over, but he hated those who became awestruck by him as well. Indifference was more tolerable than hero worship. He hung his head and continued toward the tower. Let's go. They all followed behind him, throwing glares at the people who had thrown hate-filled glances toward him. Tenten sped up to walk beside him and wrapped her arm around his. Don't worry. At least the children don't hate you. Naruto nodded, but kept his head down. They don't hate me now, but what about when their parents talk to them? The group now stood in Tsunade's office, Naruto directly in the middle, recounting what happened. They listened in awe at his story and stood back at attention when Tsunade, HM'd, and folded her hands under her chin. So, Itachi wants to test his power against you. That sounds like something he'd do. Tenten was just bait then. Does he know about your supernatural abilities? I didn't mention them, but he was definitely curious. I see. Naruto, I believe it is time to tell everyone what you are exactly. He nodded his head and sighed. Telling secrets was never his big thing. I'm Kami's warrior. That's where I got the hammer from, the chain from, and now, the wings. I'm her angel here on earth and it's my mission to collect a soul that is very tainted for her. He looked out over their faces and closed his eyes. I just want you to know that I'm still Naruto. I'm not a monster or a demon. Crickets didn't even chirp, until a snorting sound came from Sakura and the whole group laughed. We know who you are, Naruto. You're kind of hard to forget. But, my appearance. Guy gave his infamous, knee sky pose, and let the light flicker off his teeth. Yosh. Your youth shines brightly, Naruto-kun. The wings and eyes are but a testament to your flames of youth. Guy-sensei. Naruto's flames of youth shine as brightly as the sun. You two shut the hell up. Tenten bashed the two on the head and they settled down, cringing from her wrath. She took a deep breath and turned to her boyfriend. Naruto, just because you look different doesn't mean we think differently of you. I thought we'd been over this before. You're you. You just have wings. Fluffy, soft, cute wings. Without knowing it, she had begun rubbing them and Naruto was feeling very uncomfortable. His eye was twitching and he'd begun to shiver. The snickers coming from behind him weren't helping. Seeing Tsunade bite her lip to keep from laughing was most definitely not helping. Ten-chan, can you please stop doing that? She peeked around the wing, smiling at him. Why? Tsunade coughed and pointed downward while keeping a smirk on her face. Tenten followed her finger down and her eyes bugged. The front of Naruto's pants were stretched to the limit and he was doing his best not to fidget or move. His soft whimpers were pleasing to her ears, but she relinquished her hold on him, for now. She had a secret weapon now to use on him. Tsunade shooed the others out of the office and they left after reassuring Naruto that they were still his friends. As soon as the door closed behind the last one, The remaining three heard a familiar voice. So, you finally unlocked it. Sooner than I thought. Naruto turned his now silver eyes to the voice and sighed. Hello, Sanosuke. No, don't bother getting up. It's just me. I never just drop in to say hello. It's always business, ungrateful brats. Sanosuke pulled two more kunai out of yet another ruined shirt and grit his teeth. These two were always trouble. I'm happy to see that you unlocked your final gift, Naruto, but we were watching that fight. Why did you hold back? I didn't. Sanosuke leaned down to get nose to nose with the boy and growled. Bulls. Naruto began to grow angry with always being called a liar. I wasn't holding back. Why in the hell doesn't anybody believe me? Because you were holding back. You could have easily beaten Itachi. The question is, why? Naruto shook his head and his feathers ruffled angrily. I don't understand. Sanosuke frowned and crossed his arms. Are you that afraid of your own power, Naruto? Did using the Kyuubi's power all those years make you afraid of your own? You need to let yourself go. Tap into that power. It's yours to use. I'm not afraid of my power. Then why is it that at times you shine brightly and other times you couldn't fight your way out of a wet paper bag? Whenever you feel your own power start to break forth, you get scared and tone it down. The only times that power has come forth was in your fight with Gaara. He leaned in again and pinned the boy to the wall with his gaze. You rely on borrowed power too much. Your own power is more than sufficient. The Kyuubi's power was sufficient as a backup until you became reliant on it. You became reliant on another. His teeth curled back in a sneer. Do you want to know who you're acting like? Naruto growled and his wings spread out in a menacing gesture. Don't you dare. You're acting like him, Naruto. Isn't that right, Jiraiya? He cut his eyes to the corner and watched the white-haired man emerge from the shadows. It might be true, but I'm not saying anything until I know who you are and what the hell you're doing threatening my student. Tsunade sighed and slapped her hand on the desk. Jiraiya, calm down and sit down. All of you, sit down. Sanosuke, explain. Sanosuke glared at Jiraiya and took a seat. Gladly. Tsunade rubbed her temples and passed the sake dish to Jiraiya again. The two former teammates had decided halfway through the angel's explanation that getting spaced was a good idea. So far, they had a few general points. Naruto's wings were permanent and allowed him to glide along the ground at very, very high speeds. The eyes were also permanent and indicated his status as Kami's chosen warrior. Silver is pure, and besides, they're intimidating. Tenten thought he looked cute with the wings. Kami was disappointed with his fight against Itachi and insisted that he let go of his inhibitions. Naruto loved to have his wings rubbed. Akatsuki was still a group of douchebags. She took a deep breath and stared at the angel. So, how do you propose he be trained? I suggest that he come with me and Jiraiya on a little, TS. I'm going to tear those barriers he has down. Tsunade steepled her fingers and took on a contemplative look. What will you do? Sanosuke glared at Jiraiya. Fix what the dumbass here did. What the hell does that mean? You taught him to be reliant on a demon's power instead of using his own. Kyuubi's power was only meant to be used in extreme circumstances. It's his to use as he sees fit. I don't see what the problem is. Sanosuke ran his hand down his face and growled. This is why you're coming with us. I want you to see what the boy's true power can do. You haven't been around since Kami chose him. Jiraiya scowled and sat back. He had nothing further to say. Tenten raised her hand slowly. Can I come? Sanosuke smiled and nodded his head. You may if Tsunade lets you. I have no say in that. Well, since you're taking charge of two shinobi under my control without my permission already, what the hell? Why not take one of my best kunoikas as well? Stupid ass angel. I'll take that as a yes, that she can come. I'll come for you in 2 days. Prepare yourselves. He disappeared without a trace and Jiraiya followed, grumbling to himself. Tsunade sighed and called out to him. Jiraiya, come back in the morning. I want to discuss certain tactics with you. He nodded and left through the window. He had some thinking to do. She turned back to the two lovebirds and shook her head. You two go home and relax. Take the next 2 days off. It appears you're both going to be busy in the coming days. They nodded and left through the door, Naruto's wings scraping the doorframe. Naruto sighed as they walked through Tenten's front door. How was he going to sleep with the wings on his back? It wouldn't be very comfortable. The wings can retract, you know. He swung around to face Sanosuke and tilted his head. What do you mean? They can't be retracted all the time. Just while you're sleeping or unconscious, or if you need them to, like while you're showering or something. How? Your body will store them so you can sleep comfortably or if you're in a cramped space. Don't worry, it's a natural function. But, even when they're not there, they're still there. I'll see you in 2 days. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Naruto nodded and walked into the bedroom. He really wanted a shower right now. He heard Tenten call him and walked toward her voice out of habit. He didn't really notice the fog in the bathroom as he opened the door, but he did notice the Tenten. Can you wash my back? His eyes roamed up and down her body as fast as they could, drinking up the beauty. Tenten smiled at his obvious interest and moved toward him. Will you? He nodded and took the sponge from her, but his wings hit the doorframe. I can't. My wings won't. They both watched as the wings began to shrink until they receded into his back, a pair of detailed angel's wings tattoos the only evidence they existed. Tenten stepped behind him and rubbed the marks. Naruto shuddered. They were just as sensitive as the unsealed wings. She smiled and pressed herself into his back, wrapping her arms around him to rest right above his painfully erect L. She leaned up and whispered into his ear. No putting it in, but I believe that a little heavy petting is in order after our ordeal. Besides, you've been confined to those pants for too long. She reached down and yanked his pants off with one smooth motion, his S springing upward as she grasped it. He gasped and she kissed the back of his N. She loved being in control. Poor baby, does someone need release? Naruto nodded and began to move with her pumps. She grinned when she felt him tense and squeezed him at the base, eliciting a grunt of pain. Tenten, what the hell? I was close. She reached up and kissed him, his C pressed between them. And you'll get close several times. By the time I let you come, you'll be so desperate too, you'll do whatever I want. Naruto winced as she squeezed him again and growled. You've been talking to Anko and Kurenai again, haven't you? Maybe. Naruto rolled his eyes and let her just have her way. It was going to be a long night. Long, and pleasurable. Tenten lay snuggled into his side, sighing happily after her own os. She hadn't known the boy had such deft fingers. She had limited their encounter to hands only. Oral, she said, would be a treat for another day. Naruto was just about to drift off to sleep, when a kunai swished through the night and into the wall above him. He reached up and pulled it down, sliding the note off of it. I wish to speak with you, alone. No kissum, no Tenten, no distractions, no deception. Meet me on the Yondime's head at midnight. Itachi. Naruto scowled as he slipped out of bed, his wings appearing as he stepped outside. He flew as fast as he could to the mountain and found a dark-haired man illuminated by the moonlight. The pale light of the moon is quite peaceful, is it not, Naruto-kun? What do you want, Itachi? To talk. Nothing more, nothing less. No deception. No deception, no tricks. Just a talk between two shinobi. Naruto folded his arms and flared his wings, the moonlight behind him shadowing his presence and bringing his glowing silver eyes to the forefront. You have 5 minutes. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.